I'm Kristen. Welcome back to my channel. Happy February. We made it through the first month of 2021. Kind of incredible, to be honest. But we are not here to talk about February right now. We are here to talk about all of the books that I read in January. And I honestly had such an incredible reading month in January of 2021, and I'm so excited to talk about these books, so let's just dive on in. The first book that I read in 2021 was Clap When You Land by Elizabeth Acevedo, and this book blew my mind, to be completely honest. I have never considered myself a big fan of poetry or verse. Like 99.9% of the things that I typically read are prose, but I heard so many incredible things about this book that I had to pick it up. So this book is about two girls. One is living in the Dominican Republic, one is living in the Bronx in New York, and unbeknownst to both of them, they have the same father. And he travels back and forth between the two places. He spends the summer in the Dominican Republic and he spends the rest of the year in New York City. So neither of the girls know about this other family that he has. And at the very beginning of this book, we find out that he dies in a tragic plane crash. And from there, it follows these two girls as they both go through this grieving process about their father and as they uncover this secret life that their father was living. And it was written so incredibly beautifully. I was so captivated by the way that this story was told and the characters that were built. When I read like the last couple chapters of this book, I was just like quietly crying the whole time. It was just so beautiful, and the way that these characters' lives intertwine and how they come together is so incredible. And truly, Elizabeth Acevedo's writing is just stunning. I was so captivated the whole time that I read this book. I feel like there is more that I can say about this, but I don't know what it is or how to articulate it. I just have so many like emotions and feelings about this book, and it was so beautiful. I gave this book 5 out of 5 stars. Genuinely a great way to kick off my reading year of 2021. Incredible. The next book that I read was Cemetery Boys by Aiden Thomas, and oh my goodness, this book was so much fun. It genuinely was just an epic adventure, and I loved the characters and the world that was built so much. It was genuinely just such a good time. So this book follows Yadriel, a trans boy living with his Latinx family who also happens to live in a cemetery and has the power to send spirits to the afterlife. Most of this book follows Yadriel trying to prove himself to his family and prove that he is a man and can participate in their culture's traditions of sending these spirits into the afterlife. Traditionally, this is something that is only done by men, and the women are healers. And a lot of his family is struggling to understand the fact that he is a man and he is capable of sending these spirits to the afterlife. He doesn't want to train to be a healer. He wants to be out in the field, you know, doing that work and sending the spirits to the afterlife. So along the way, he accidentally summons the spirit of the resident bad boy, Julian, and from there, things just get a little crazy. It becomes a wild ride of Julian wanting to figure out how he died, and Yadriel just wanting to release Julian's spirit into the afterlife so that he can prove to his family that he's actually capable of doing it. And throughout the course of this journey, they really do just become really good friends, and they are just so sweet. They are such good characters. It is so precious to see the way that the two of them come together throughout the course of this book. And by the end of this book, I was just so invested in their relationship, and you know, I really just was rooting for them throughout this whole book. Both of them to, you know, like get that conclusion that they deserved. And it was just such a fun, like, fantasy mystery. There was lots of twists and turns and a crazy plot twist at the end that maybe I should have seen coming, but I definitely didn't, and it made it so much fun. There were so many awesome characters, and the way that the world was built was really fun and captivating. It was another 5-star read. Like I said, I really had a great reading month in January, and this book was no exception. Next, I read The Wrath and the Dawn by Renee Ahdeih. So this book is a wild ride from start to finish. It was super captivating and just crazy, to be honest. This book follows main character Shahrazad as she is trying to avenge the death of one of her best friends. So pretty much what is happening in the kingdom that they're living in is the king has taken a different bride every day for the past almost 100 days, and every day at sunrise he kills them. So he has been killing all of these young girls, and Shahrazad's best friend was one of the most recent girls to get killed, and so she makes a plan to trick her way into the palace and become the king's next bride so that she can in turn kill him and avenge her friend's death. This does not completely go as planned. There are a lot of twists and turns, but during the time that she's there, she actually ends up falling in love with Khaled, who is the king. So her plan was to kill him, and she fell in love with him, which, you know, honestly, weirder things have happened, right? This book really just follows her and her struggle to try to rationalize these feelings that she's coming to have for this man that she initially thought was a monster and that she wanted to kill. And it also follows multiple other points of view of people who are important to Shahrazad and her life. As a secondary storyline, it follows one of her childhood best friends very closely as he is trying to break into the castle and save her from this king that he also thinks is a monster at the time. And it is just super interesting to see how these different storylines intertwine and how they all have kind of different end goals. The way that this book in particular ended was wild. This is the first book in a duology. I just got the second book. I have not read it yet, but I am so excited to because there were so many open ends at the end of this book, and I'm so excited to see how they all get tied up in the second book. I gave this book 4 out of 5 stars. It was just such a fun adventure, and it was so interesting to see how the characters developed. And it also started to have some fantastical elements. There were little hints at people having magical abilities, and I'm so excited to see how that comes to fruition in the second book as well. The next book that I read was Love and Olives by Jenna Welch. This is the 3rd book in the Love and Gelato series, and it was just a nice shift to take after reading kind of like a heavy, high-stakes book. This is just so much fun. I absolutely love this series by Jenna Welch. I have read all 3 of them. I think they're all so cute. They're kind of like a little travel series. The first one takes place in Italy, the second one in Ireland, and this one takes place in Greece. This follows main character Liv as she is invited to Greece by her father, who has been searching for Atlantis, and he left their family when Liv was really little, and she's kind of held it against him ever since. She doesn't completely understand why he left and why he never came back for her or visited her at all as a child. And now she is in her senior year of high school. She's about to start applying for colleges, all of that sort of stuff, and she gets this postcard from her father that says, "I need your help working on this project. Will you come to Greece?" And her mother more or less says, "You gotta go, sorry, you don't really have a choice." So she gets on a plane and she goes to Greece, and all sorts of shenanigans and fun ensue. So first of all, I just want to talk about the fact that this book is so like picturesque, which is kind of weird to say about a book. But every description of like the coastline and the ocean and the buildings were just so beautiful, and it was so nice and cozy to be reading in the middle of the winter. I mean, it did really make me miss summer and like the sun, but it was just so nice, and it was such a good, like, easy, fun read. It did cover some heavy topics, like there's a lot of talk about mental health and mental illness towards the end of this book especially, which I think was such a great narrative storyline for this book to take. It really made the characters feel more realistic, and I was way more attached to them. This book is just so fun, and it follows these characters on their adventure as they are trying to learn more about Atlantis and more about each other. It has a really great father-daughter narrative as well as a super cute romance with Liv's father's assistant, I guess. His name is Theo. He is super precious. He's just so cute. He's always telling jokes, and he knows how to lighten the mood at the perfect time. All in all, this was just a really cute contemporary YA romance. It was absolutely wonderful. I enjoyed it so much. I gave it 4 stars. It was just so much fun. The next book that I read was Love Letters to the Dead by Dellaira, and this was probably my least favorite book that I read in January. I gave it 3 stars, and I just had a really hard time getting into this book. The whole premise is that the main character is writing letters to dead celebrities. She was given an assignment in English class to write a letter to a dead person, and she never actually hands that assignment in, and instead she just starts creating this notebook full of all of these letters to dead people that mean something to her life. At the start of this book, we have found out that her sister has died, I think a year previous to when this book takes place, and Laurel, the main character, is now a freshman in high school, so there's kind of all sorts of stuff going on at the beginning of this story, and I definitely really thought that the concept of writing a full book written in letters was really interesting, but I kind of realized as I started reading it that it all felt very passive, which makes sense because all of these letters are written in the past tense because she's talking about things that have already happened. And I just had a really hard time getting into it. To be honest, I almost DNF'd this book a couple of times, but I just decided to push through because it's pretty short, and I really was just like, who's to say it could get better? And to be completely honest, I really did like the end of this book. The last 50 to 100 pages were genuinely really quite great, but the first 200 were just kind of meh. So you know, you win some, you lose some, but all in all, I mean, this was a really interesting story about family dynamics and loss and grief, and it had a lot of really interesting characters in it. To be honest, I cared a lot more about the side characters in this book than I did about the main character, Laurel. All in all, this was a really interesting concept, and I liked where the storyline went in the end, but it wasn't executed in a way that I personally found super captivating, and I was a little bit bored through most of it. The next book that I read in January was Starflight by Melissa Landers. This book, ooh, wild. I typically don't read a lot of sci-fi for whatever reason. It's just a genre that I don't buy a lot of, but I do really enjoy it when I read it, and this one is one of those books. It was super fun. The space world that was built within this book was so interesting, and the characters were definitely my favorite part of this book. It is told in dual perspective from Salora and Doran. Salora is a poor engineer, and she is trying to get to the outer realms of space so that she can try to make a life for herself. She has kind of been exiled on Earth. There's nothing left for her here, so she's trying to find a new place to go, a new place to just, you know, start over. Doran, on the other hand, is very rich. His father owns an oil company, I believe, and he has all sorts of money and is kind of just, you know, living life, partying it up, all of that good stuff. And they do not like each other. Yes, I know, surprise, surprise, enemies to lovers in a book that I'm reading? Wild. But this book is enemies to lovers, and the way that it was written was so good. Like, this is arguably one of the most believable enemies to lovers that I have read. It was one of those ones where it just felt like all of a sudden they didn't really realize that they were starting to like each other, and all of a sudden they were like, what's happening here? That's the best, when they don't realize that it's happening, and then all of a sudden they're like, oh no, am I in love with you? They end up more or less on this broken down spaceship, kind of on the run from the law. The crew that runs this spaceship is just so fun, and they're all over the place. I loved all of the characters so much. So much happens. There's space pirates. Like, I don't know what else to say to sell you on this book other than space pirates. It was such a good adventure. The characters were chef's kiss. The characters were by far my favorite part of this book. It was just so good. It was really great. 4 out of 5 stars. It was a lot of fun. I really loved it. The last book that I read in January, I'm filming this on February 1st. I finished this last night at the very end of January, and it is Lore by Alexandra Bracken. This is a book based in Greek mythology that takes place in modern day New York City, and it it was a ride. So this book follows main character Lore, and she has spent the last 7 years of her life trying to remove herself from this world that she grew up in. Pretty much, she is a part of this society of descendants of Greek gods, and she is the last of her bloodline that is left. You find out really early on in this book that her family was murdered at the end of the last Aegon, and what the Aegon is a punishment that Zeus sent for these gods, and every 7 years for 7 days these gods come down to earth in mortal bodies, and if a member of one of these bloodlines kills them, they capture these gods' powers and bring glory to your bloodline. And at the end of the last Aegon, after Lore's family was killed, she has decided that she is going to give it all up and leave this life that she has grown up knowing. However, at the beginning of the next Aegon, Lore is pulled back into this world as she finds the goddess Athena in dire need of her help. And from there, things kind of spiral all over the place. The concept of this book is absolutely incredible to me. The way that Alexandra Bracken tells this story was so captivating. Lore as a character was so interesting, and she just has like so much baggage and so many thoughts about this world that she is a part of. There's so many good characters in this book as well. All of the side characters and Lore's friends are so incredibly well developed, and I really came to care about them by the end of this book. Truly, so much happened in this book, and it was just so much fun as someone who loves Greek mythology. I mean, I grew up reading the Percy Jackson series. It was so nice to visit a book that used those Greek myths as a center point for its storyline. If you are interested in Greek mythology at all, I would highly recommend picking up this book. It just really built such an interesting world using those myths and stories and the gods, and it was just a really interesting and fun read. And there was romance, there was so much blood and gore. It was honestly a little bit more gory than I expected it to be going in, but I'm not mad about it. I mean, they are in the midst of fighting each other to try to either save or kill the gods, so you know, it's gotta get a little bit bloody, right? But yeah, this book was just so interesting and very captivating, and if you like Greek mythology, I would definitely check this one out. And that's it! These are all of the books that I read in January of 2021. It genuinely was such a good reading month for me. I enjoyed all of these books. It was a good time. I had a lot of fun. I'm gonna set these down before I drop them all on the floor. I honestly had such a good reading month, and it was so much fun. I really enjoyed all of the books, and I'm hoping to bring this good reading energy with me into February. I'm hopeful to just keep reading some really good books as I continue through 2021, so I can keep sharing all of these wonderful books with all of you. Thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it. I hope that you enjoyed this video, and I will see you again with another video soon. Bye!